So welcome everyone to the second day of our land Learning from the Land series and our second session of our second day with Mr. Bernie Daigle. So if you're all ready to go and you can see the screen, and I'll just say if the screen is full and your picture is blocking it, you might want to minimize your view to just speaker, like just Bernie. Otherwise, you can go up into view options, which is beside Bernie's green stripe of sharing, and click on side by side view if you want to see the other classes and not cover his presentation. So there, welcome again. And Bernie, thank you so much for being here. You are on your own.
Thanks, Pam. And it's a pleasure to join you in your classes today, although it's virtual. It's kind of the where we're at right now. Like Pam said, my name is Bernie Daigle. I work with Natural Resources Canada, Canadian Forest Service. I'm a forester. I studied forestry. And today I'm going to talk to you about identifying trees, some tree species that are of particular interest, importance to the Indigenous community. And then I'll end up talking a little bit about climate change and how climate change is going to impact the forest in this region. Okay. Everybody see the second slide? Hoping.
Good here.
Okay, so identifying trees is, I'd say it's not easy. There's a lot of challenges out there, things that kind of make it a little bit harder than a lot of people think it should be. The first one is being able to identify what a softwood tree and what a hardwood tree is, because those are the two big classes of trees. Softwood trees are also called conifers or coniferous trees because they produce cones, and cones is where the seed are. They're also called evergreen trees because unlike the hardwoods, they hold on to their needles or most of their needles during winter. There's an exception to that. Nature always gives us exceptions, and the exception in this case is a tree called the tamarack. Tamarack goes by different names. It's also called larch, eastern larch, hackmatack, juniper, and I think I'm missing one. But it goes by a lot of names, and that's another challenge that we have with identifying trees. The hardwoods, conifers mostly have needles. Hardwoods have leaves, and the leaves tend to fall at this time of year, and all you see are the branches in winter. The tamarack that I mentioned, at this time of year, it's starting to turn a nice bright yellow, and in a couple of weeks those needles will fall off. So the tamarack, although it's an evergreen, it's also deciduous, which is another name for the hardwood trees. I've got a cat in front of me here. I added black ash. Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? I added black ash as another tree that has a lot of common names. And black ash is a species that imagine quite a few of you know is very important to, yeah, anybody want to see my cat? To the Indigenous community. It's one of the noble trees. It's got many names: brown ash, swamp ash, water ash, basket ash. Pam earlier noted that Elder Joe John is a basket maker. So the black ash has tremendous cultural significance to the Indigenous community. So we're doing tree ID, so I think we weren't going to key this one out later or identify it, but just go through the characteristics of black ash. The leaf is what we call the compound leaf. So this whole structure here is the leaf, and all of these other leaves are called leaflets. So that attaches to the stem or the twig by something that's called the leaf stalk or a petiole. The twig, you'll notice here that you've got buds on the twig, and the buds are opposite each other. So that's another important characteristic. The bark, kind of brownish, which where it gets its name brown ash. The seed are called samaras, and during good seed years, the trees will absolutely be loaded with these. They go from this light green color to kind of a dark charcoal. Two of the names, swamp ash, water ash, you can see where black ash can be found, usually along water courses, and there's usually water or running water quite close to it. And of course, the beautiful products that can be made out of black ash. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware of what these look like. Can't talk about ash without talking about an insect that's been causing a lot of issues with all our ash species, including the black ash. It was introduced in North America in 2002, and that was around Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario. And it kills all of what we call the true ash species. We have mountain ashes around here as well, but those are true ashes, and this insect pest doesn't affect them. It was found in New Brunswick and Edmundston in 2018, and in Oromocto near Fredericton and Moncton in 2019 last year. And this is a very serious pest as far as insect pests goes. We have native insect pests that come and go. They usually don't kill the trees. This one will kill a lot of trees. The insect, by its color, is kind of a pretty green color, emerald color. This is the larval stage. So the insect will lay its eggs on the bark. The eggs will hatch and go underneath the bark into a layer that's called the cambium, and then it'll start feeding, and it creates these what we call feeding galleries. And when you have a lot of them, they'll eventually circle all around the tree and essentially cut the circulation of the tree. So this is something should be aware of, and there's a lot of work being done, but it's a pest that's extremely difficult to control. So we looked at the common names. Some species hybridize, meaning that pollen from one tree, they're usually closely related, can fertilize the cone or the flower of another tree and create an offspring that has characteristics of both. So an example of that here is red and black spruce. And in the field, they can be quite tricky to identify. We're going to be using what we call a key to identify species, but this key is only going to work when you're in the woods and looking at our indigenous species. And that's because we have a lot of tree species, especially in communities, in parks, that aren't indigenous or native to this area. And those can create a lot of confusion at times. I've had foresters call me, and I remember one year I worked for the National Tree Seed Center, and this forester called me and he said, I want to collect some seed from sugar maple, and I want to know if they're any good and how I should germinate them. And that year, throughout the province, the sugar maple weren't producing any seed. So I said, "Are you sure that this is sugar maple?" And well, he tore a strip off me. He said, "I've been a forester for 40 years. I've been in the woods. I know what a sugar maple is." I said, "Okay, fine." I said, "Why don't you send me some seed, and I'll see. Number one, I'll try to germinate them, see if they're good, if they're viable, and then I'll let you know." So he sent me some seed, and they weren't sugar maple. They were a species called Norway maple that's planted a lot. So even experienced people can make that mistake. So it's important to know the species that are in your neighborhood. But the tool that we're going to be playing with or working with today should only be used in the woods. And finally, we're going to talk about using keys and how a key can make you more comfortable and help you understand what these species are. So what we're going to be working with is what's called a dichotomous key. And it's a tool that we use for identifying different plants and animals and other things. Some keys are very specific. There's keys that only, all you need is a twig. And then you get into very detailed descriptions on the twig and how many scales there are and stuff like that. The key that you'll be working with is a lot more general than that. You look at the leaves and the cones mostly. So a little bit easier than just looking at a twig. We do mention twigs and where the buds are, like I mentioned earlier with the black ash. So the key is essentially a series of questions, and each question gives you a choice between two characteristics of that tree that you're looking at, and you identify the species by choosing the characteristic that best fits the description. So now would be the time to pass out the keys if you have them, so that they can follow along here a little bit. So like I mentioned, this is, you have two keys. This is the one that says the twig and cone key for the softwood trees of the Acadian forest. Now, the Acadian forest is how we've known this, or Acadian forest is what we call the forest of this region. But before the Europeans arrived, the people in the region, the indigenous people, had a name for the region of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, parts of Maine, and it was called Wabanaki. I can't think of it. Wabanaki.
Wabanaki. Yep.
Wabanaki. Yeah, I should have had it here. My apologies for that. So we call it now the Acadian forest. So as you go through the key here, The first choice between two items is that the leaves are not needle-like or the leaves are needle-like. So when you look at what we have above here, you would say that these are needle-like, correct? So that would
Everybody
mean
see
that
the key, Bernie? Catherine, Megan, Micheline, Will, Grace, can you all see Bernie's key completely on the screen?
what's important is that you can see the numbers at the very end here. That's what was being hidden last time.
Right. So you should see
So,
a 2 at the end
yeah.
of the needle-like and a 3 at the end of the leaf-like. And if you can't, it might help to shrink your screen under view options before we go any further. And I think they're doing that, Bernie, if we can just pause for a second.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. You can't see, you are viewing Bernie Daigle's screen up at the top of your.
Let me see if I can. Now I can see a single needle, number 3, and that's as far as we can see.
Single needle number 3.
Catherine, you have to exit full screen. That's what I do.
Okay.
Can we scroll?
You can't control Bernie's screen, but there are view options.
Yeah, just
right corner.
There should be a tab right here. If you click on that, this is mine that says, I don't even know if you can see that.
No, we can't see yours.
You can't see, okay.
But if they can find the view options and shrink to side by side.
Go to side by side. It should be the last option.
Okay. Miss Gallagher's class, can you see the full stripe colored in on Bernie's key? Raise your hand if you can see the screen completely. Perfect.
I'm seeing it says 3.6, 3 identification, and I can see the 1 and then it's a pink strip and then the 2's at the other end.
You got
Perfect.
it, girl. All right, Bernie,
Perfect.
off you go.
Okay, so the first choice is what the leaves look like, and leaves not needle-like, leaves needle-like. So in this case, they're needle-like. This is what the option of not needle-like is. And I'm just gonna talk about this a little bit because we have 10 conifers and 9 of them have needles. This one doesn't, and it's a very important species for the Indigenous people.
So Bernie,
And
hold
it's
on
called,
up again. Sorry, Bernie.
no, I actually have it on screen here as well.
Yes, just hold it still. Can everybody see that species live in Bernie's hand?
So this is what is not
No,
needle-like.
I don't see Bernie.
Okay, so Bernie, your speaker
okay.
view, if they're
So
not seeing.
if you look at the screen, this is what the needles or the leaves look like. So they're kind of scaly. And the species is eastern white cedar. And I mentioned that a lot of species have different common names. This one's northern white cedar, arbor vitae, swamp cedar, or just cedar. It's one of the noble trees and is one of the 4 sacred medicines. The other one being tobacco, sweetgrass, and sage. The bark is kind of long strips and they flake off easily. It's a very pleasant smell. If you crush the leaves, it's got a very distinct odor that's very, very pleasant. And of course, it's used in smudge ceremonies. So this is just an example of a smudge stick. Now, I've got a question here, and we've got all of these common names, but one of them, this one here, seems very different from all of the other ones. Does anybody have any idea what arbor vitae could mean? And you might be able to, it's Latin, but if you broke the word down, arbor and vitae is a clue as to what this could be. Does anybody have an idea? What does arbor mean? We have Arbor Day.
Come right up to your mic or tell your teacher and she'll.
Vitae? Fast? Pense français.
En français?
I just said pensez en français because it looks,
Pense en français, okay.
it looks more like the French word than the
Wait,
Yes, good clue, good clue.
arbor.
Arbor, arbor,
Bee.
and
Bee,
vitae,
yes, tree of life. V.
tree of life.
sweet.
Excellent, that's perfect. And why was it called that? Anybody have an idea? This goes back into history. Early settlers and a disease that affected a lot of the people here. It had to do with diet. Have you ever heard of a disease called scurvy? Yes?
Hands up if you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the 16th century, Jacques Cartier, he learned from the indigenous people that if you took the leaves from cedar and boiled them, it would help cure scurvy and help prevent the Europeans or the people who came over from dying, because it was killing a lot of people. So it's just knowledge from what the people here could share. And I read someplace that this was one of the first trees to be brought back to Europe because of its tremendous medicinal qualities.
Cool.
So back to our key. So we've determined that it's needle-like. So we have to go here to number 3. So the next choice are the needles in bundles or groups, in which case you would go to number 4, or are they single needles, in which case you would go to number 7. So here we have needles and we have a group of 2. So the key we've got 2 choices. So this is the correct choice. So then you go to number 4. And we have choices again. We have 2 needles, in a bundle, or more than 2 needles. Well, everybody can count, and we have 2 needles here. So at this point, we have a choice. We have a choice between red pine and jack pine. And red pine, the needles are straight. Yeah, these are fairly straight. 10 to 16 centimeters long. These are only 3.5. And they'll break or snap when bent. We can't do that because you don't have a sample for this. The cones are roundish, not really. 4 to 7 centimeters long. Yeah, that fits. And the cone scales are thicker at the tip. We can't assess that. How about jack pine? Needles are 2 to 4. That fits. Divergent, that means that they split apart, and they do. And twisted, we really can't see that here. The cones, 3 to 7 centimeters long, that fits. Serotinous means that they don't open easily. And these you can see are quite closed, and actually these cones do stay closed for a long time, and usually curved. So which of these 2 descriptions best fits what we see here? pretty obvious that it's the second one. So that is how you use a dichotomous key. You always go to choices. Okay, so if everybody is ready, we're going to look at the softwoods now and then use the key to identify a few of them. But before we do that, we already looked at leaves. So we have a compound leaf like we saw with the black ash. And then we have what we call simple leaves. So this is the blade of the leaf. And we have this structure here that attaches the leaf to the twig. It's called a leaf stalk or a petiole. And there's another example here. And then, of course, we have needles. We have twigs. So a characteristic that we always look for is whether the buds, which are these structures here, are opposite one another, or if they're not opposite or alternate. Now, this, if you look at the hardwood key, this is the first choice that you have. And if the buds are opposite, it's going to put you to, I think it's, yeah, if the buds are opposite, then you go to number 2. And what's really neat about this is that if buds are opposite, it leads you to 2 classes of trees. So, and those are the maples and the ashes. So if you've got an opposite bud and you know that it's a tree that's indigenous to this area, then it can't be anything else other than a maple or an ash. So you've already identified, let's say we have 20 hardwood trees, you've already identified or eliminated 13 of them. So you're pretty good. If it's a composite, if you've got a composite leaf, then it's an ash. If it's a simple leaf, you've got a maple. So a very easy way to key out in your head, even in winter at times, that you know that it can't be anything else but one of these 2. We've looked a little bit at the bark. 3 examples of bark here. That's yellow birch, white birch, and this is balsam fir with the resin blisters. And of course, seeds and cones. This is red maple. I showed you the seeds from black ash a while ago. So this is the seed from a white ash, quite a bit different from the black ash. This is a cone from a yellow birch, balsam fir, red oak acorn, cone from a black spruce, and these are seed from basswood. So we have 10 softwood species in the Wabanaki forest. Just checking my time here. Okay. Balsam fir, eastern hemlock or hemlock. We've already looked at the cedar, and we've talked about tamarack. 3 pines, we've checked out jack pine. There's also red and white, and 3 spruces, black, red, and white. So if you've got your samples, I'm going to ask you to work with the softwood key and identify what we have here. So I think you have 2 twigs that look a little bit similar, and this would be the one with the longer needles of the 2. Now, do all the classes have the twig samples or the branch samples?
It looks like they are receiving them. Yeah, we got a thumbs up from, yep.
Perfect.
I wonder if they have this twig sample. I bet they do.
I hope so. So it's a matter of going through the process like we did earlier. So
I need to make sure if I gave them the right one.
How do I know if
Well,
I'm
we'll
not
soon
precise?
find out. This is the great thing about a key. We're going to find out.
Okay.
If you're going to key something out, whether it's this one or not.
Right.
So the first question is, are the leaves needle-like or not needle-like? So we've already determined that. So what we're looking at is this here. So this is the leaf, so it's needle-like. And so you would go to number 3, and I'll let you go from there on. So the 2 choices on 3.
Feel free, classes, to unmute. We would love to hear.
Yes,
what
I think that would be beneficial for me as well.
Yeah.
And if somebody has an answer, just come to the screen and let us know or shout it out.
Yeah.
Any ideas, guys?
Or maybe what I'll do is when everybody thinks they have it, I'll work through the key and see if you went the right path.
Okay. It's great to see the teachers walking around. Obviously we can't, but I think they are rolling. I think I can see rolling between fingers going on.
Yeah.
You know, for one second, I need again.
I really unmuted.
Oh, it is unmuted. So what do you guys saying? Somebody said balsam fir.
Ah,
Yay, that's perfect. Yeah, it is balsam fir, and we'll just go through the key just to make sure everybody followed it correctly. So the leaves are not needle-like, so you go to number 3 and you have a choice between the needles in bundles or groups, or the needles are single, and we can see here that the needles are single, and that brings you to number 7. And we have a choice between the needles are flat, they don't roll between the fingers, or they're 4-sided and they roll between the fingers. And when you do that and you've got a 4-sided, it rolls so easily. It's there's no question that what you're doing there. So in the flat, you've got 2 choices. One is eastern hemlock and the other one is balsam fir. And the big difference is one that is easy for me is just the smell. If you take and crush those needles and smell it, it smells like Christmas, because balsam fir is a tree that a lot of people put up at Christmas. It's got a very pleasant smell. You don't get that from the hemlock. Another is they talk about the leaf stalk or the petiole that is attached to the twig. And here we see that the needle is directly attached. There's no little leaf stalk there. And the other characteristic is that they talk about 2 white lines and 1 darker line, and the hemlock has 3 lines. So we're not going to key this next one out because it's going to be hemlock, but let's just look at the difference. So the needles are flattened, the cones, so that's balsam fir. This is hemlock. So you can see the tree is very different. The bark is very, very different. The cones are different. And if you look closely, and this is where, with the naked eye, it's a little bit hard to see at times, but you can see here, that little structure there, that's the leaf stalk or the petiole. And the needle isn't attached directly, it needs this little structure here. And the lines, you've got 2 light lines and 1, 2, 3 darker lines. So that's the difference. The cones are much, much smaller. These are almost 2 inches long at their longest, and the needles are flat again. So these are the only 2 single needles that you can't roll between your fingers. So it's a balsam fir or a hemlock. And if you want to be a little bit smart, you just remember what the balsam fir is by the smell, and the other one will be the hemlock. Hemlock is a species that gives a lot of people trouble because it's not as common as many others. Okay, this one, I saved the easiest for the last. What's this one? You're on your own this time.
Okay, so
White brown.
Yeah, that's the one.
White brown?
red spruce.
Red spruce? I was right.
I don't know. I don't know. Look at your key.
Yeah. Look, you really,
Good job.
with some of these, like, don't be afraid to break things apart. Like if you're looking at the needles, get close and tear the needles off the stem and see what you have.
No.
Yeah, I heard the answer a couple of times there. This one's easy.
Or did they key it? I'm curious.
I don't know, but the key works.
It does.
But the key, if you don't need the key and you're confident of what you have, you don't need the key. The key is to help you in situations where you're not quite sure. White pine is easy. It has more than one needle per. It's in bundles, and there's 5, and it's the only one that we have that has 5 needles per bundle. The cones are quite distinct; they're quite a bit longer, and the tree has a very very characteristic silhouette. So the cones are fairly long, the needles are long, and they're 5 per bundle, and Eastern white pine. How much time do I have, Pam?
You have, it is 18 after, and you go till 11:30. So you have about 12 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Hardwoods. We have 10 softwoods. We have about 20 hardwoods. I've got 19 listed here. I don't have 2 of the cherries, the pin cherry, the black cherry, and I didn't include the striped maple in my maples. I'm going to jump to this one here. So if you take your hardwood key, let's see if you can identify this one. And with the hardwood key, as I mentioned earlier, the first characteristic that you look at is whether the leaves are opposite or the leaves are not opposite. So you have to remember that the leaves come out of these structures that are called buds. So you'll have a leaf here and you'll have a leaf here. So is that opposite or not opposite?
Do you think opposite or not opposite?
Not opposite.
Okay, so what what number do you go to?
Yeah. 8, yeah.
You go to 8, that's correct. So if you look at the two choices on 8, you have, it's a compound leaf, which means it has a lot of leaflets, or it's a simple leaf. Now, is this, it has one blade attached by a leaf stalk or a petiole. So is this a simple leaf or a compound leaf? Simple, yay. So with simple, you go to number
9.
9, perfect. So the leaf edge is double tooth. So leaf edge, we're looking at what surrounds here. If it's double tooth or not double tooth. Now, I'll help you out here. This is an example of double tooth, where you have a tooth here and there's teeth between the teeth.
So it's
So in this case, is it double tooth or not double tooth?
not.
It's not. So that brings you to number
11.
11. Yes, 11. So further down, the leaf stem, so this part here, the petiole, is flat or it's not flat. Now, I've got a leaf here, and if I try to roll it, it's not rolling very easily. And if I take this leaf here, you can see that it rolls very, very easily. So this one, I can't roll it, and this one rolls very, very easily. So where does that bring us?
14.
Yes, 14. So does it have large teeth or small teeth?
Small teeth.
Or large.
Yeah, this is where it, yeah, it's big, small is a matter of perspective. But this is actually large teeth. But even if you got that wrong, you were between large tooth and trembling aspen. Now, something interesting about what in nature, if you have something that is round or flat, which of these is more stable in the wind? A round structure or a flat structure?
Hmm.
Yes, round is much stronger. And this is where, if you look at like trembling aspen, large tooth aspen, their leaves that trembling aspen, the name tells you that the leaves tremble in the wind. And it's because of the structure of the leaf stalk or the petiole. It's not as stable. So any little wind is going to make that thing flutter. So trembling aspen, even when you have a very light wind, the leaves are going to flutter. So that's where the tree gets its name. And it's a really neat way to identify. If you've got a leaf stalk that's flat, you know it's not as strong. And you think of trembling aspen, or in this case, large tooth aspen, and you've got the name. And how much time do I have, Pam?
You
have
are
time for-
24. You've got 6 minutes.
This is going to be hard.
It is, but you
Okay. does everybody have a copy of this?
They probably can't see what you're holding up, but if that's the document,
It's projecting impacts of climate change on the Acadian forest.
yes.
This is what I was going to talk about. That little publication tells you pretty much everything that you need. I'm just gonna, could I get a student to come up and just help with interpreting this graph?
Oh, we got lots of volunteers.
Okay, I see someone in Michelin's class. Please come up, person with your hand up.
Red shirt, trembling.
Red shirt, thank you. Yeah, see, you're gonna have to, I've got one of those issues that I don't distinguish too well between red and green. So I can't tell if somebody's waving a red flag or a green flag or, okay. So this is sort of what people think is the driver of climate change. And so it's a global or regional change in global or regional climate patterns. And it's largely attributed to the increased levels of a gas called carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And that's caused by the burning of fossil fuels. So where is the student that came up? Don't see. There you are. Okay. So can you see what's happening here? And we've got on this x-axis carbon dioxide levels, and on this axis the number of years, and this is where we are right now. Okay, so what is this telling us? If you were trying to explain.
0 on the screen are volunteers. Is going on right there where it's.
And if somebody in the class can help you, that's great too. What's been happening to the gas levels over time here?
They've been going up.
Rising.
And they've been going
Down.
but they've been high, they've gone down, they've gone high, gone down, and they've done that for quite a long time. What's different now?
We're burning more fossil fuels.
Yeah, all of a sudden, this whole pattern has changed. And we know that this drives climate change. What do you think happens when we're really low here? If this warms us up, what would happen here?
Where are you pointing, Bernie?
Heat says them.
Oh, I'm pointing, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was pointing on my other screen. What happens down here?
No, God, no.
Well, it gets cold.
It gets cold.
It gets cold. And this right here is about 20,000 years ago. So what were we, what was this place like 20,000 years ago? Anybody know?
Cold.
I would say very, very cold. This was an ice age, and most of the region was under about 2 kilometers of ice. So this whole we often talk about greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect is good. We need some greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. When they get too low, we have a very different problem. But here, our problem is that we have too many of them. And this is what's been happening over the last 140 years. And we see that this is for the whole globe, the whole Earth, that the temperature's been rising. You know, it goes up, it goes down. But overall, it's gone up about a full degree. I'm not going to do this. No, I'm not going to get into that. But talking about how that's going to impact our trees, this is what we call the forest composition. So what species of trees are more numerous or mostly found in our area. And we find that the most we have is balsam fir, and followed by black spruce, red maple. If climate change goes, we would say it's unchecked. We don't do anything. We don't look at alternative energy sources.
Hey, guys.
And we just let things go. I think the classes are ending, aren't they?
They're getting close. But we
Okay. Anyway,
the losers.
if the climate warms, a species like red maple will end up doing much, much better. Our provincial tree, which is balsam fir, won't be as well adapted. So the whole Acadian forest or Wabanaki forest is kind of a transition zone between the really colder loving species to the north in the boreal forest and the hardwoods that are down south. And I think this is just all of this is in this publication. So precipitation, temperature, how things are going to change over time, and we'll stop it right there. And thank you very much. And sorry I took too much time on the tree ID. I think that's important. But this is kind of neat if your teacher can lead you through that. And thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Hands up, class, if you learned something new today. Show us your hands if you learned something you never knew yesterday.
Thank you very much.
And I have to say, I have every single species, even the hatmatack in my backyard. Woohoo! So, thank you so much, Bernie and class.
You're most welcome.
And we'll come back to a birding presentation in 5.
Bye.